Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and it feels weird to be on season 2 of Psycho-Pass. Right? It feels so weird. It's a bold move, right? It is a bold strategy, Cotton, for you to take a character like Kogami and a character like Shogo, your Sherlock and Moriarty of your season, and kill them both. Well, not technically kill Kogami, but he's effectively been killed from the story. He's on his little boat going away. He may come back one day. I kind of don't want him to. I kind of want it to be over. I want him to, like, he came, he peaked, we saw abs, and he went on his merry way. I kind of am thinking that could be a good thing. Because, yeah, I like that this season focuses on, you know, the past is the past, and we can't change it, so we just have to move forward. And now Akane has to move forward as she's trying to, like, handle the Sybil system that thinks it's using her, but she thinks she's using it, and Ginoza's become the heartthrob. I'm sorry, but last episodes that I was telling Discord, I'm like, he not only simultaneously looks so vulnerable and raw, and like you stripped away the tsundere and got to see Ginoza at his core when he loses his father, but then somehow he like becomes more attractive because of it. I was like, what? If you told me at the beginning of season 1 that Ginoza was going to be the heartthrob by the end of the season, I've been like, please, no. But he kind of is. He kind of is. So I don't have any comments necessarily. However, I do want to thank Sunspots, who Sunspots and Floor up until this moment have been my faithful moderators for this series. They've done an amazing job. I got through season 1 without any spoilers. I was so excited. I had so much fun. I loved Psycho-Pass so much. It's like one of my new favorite series because it just checks off all the boxes, right? And so they are in large part to thank for that. So thank you. But Sunspots also kind of went above and beyond. So I don't know how else to describe it, but basically, I'm going to show you guys here in a second. They went through and noted the extended edition added scenes from season 1's extended edition, because I watched the extended edition and I had some people like give me some flack. They were like, oh, you shouldn't watch the extended edition. I enjoyed it. Now, watching season 2, I'm going to be doing episode by episode, episodes 1 through 9. I'm going to watch one at a time, and I doubt that the discussions will be as long as the extended edition, which some of you are probably grateful because I got pretty long-winded, especially in the last episode. But I am going to watch episodes 10 and 11 together. I'm going to watch the penultimate episode and the season finale together for season 2 because why not? Because it's an odd number and So we're going to have 10 weeks of season 2, which is pretty exciting. Yay. So I do want to note the extended edition. I want to kind of go through it. So I'm going to start this up here and go from there, and then we'll start episode 2 after that. But we're going to start this extended edition look here in 3, 2, 1. So yeah, the extended edition added scenes. Some of these I kind of predicted, but some I was like, oh, that's the extended scene? So in episode 1, there were 2 extended scenes, so I thought that was interesting. There was Shogo's monologue at the beginning of the episode, so you wouldn't have known that the entire season and series was leading up to the confrontation with Shogo in, what was it, episode 8? You wouldn't have known that if you hadn't watched the extended edition. That's so bizarre to me because I really liked that. I liked it kind of like starting at this place in the future and us working our way back towards it. I liked that, so that's crazy, right? And then Baby Kogami, I like that he's called Baby Kogami, and his monologue about the Dominator and the cigarette pack and Sasayama in the middle of the episode. I mean, the part about the Dominator and stuff, I could kind of see that being added in, but I really liked the book ending of Shogo and them first encountering, giving us that setup of them as a ship. That was a great decision. That's so weird that it's extra. In episode 2, there is Shogo's monologue with Cho and the floppy disk at the beginning of episode 2. Again, some of these like monologues and portions of the extended edition I loved. They're some of my favorite parts of those episodes, and to think that you wouldn't have that if you watched the original, that's so wild to me. Now Akane's monologue in the middle of the episode 2 set, that part made sense that it would be extra because it's not really needed. It's just like a little monologue with her and where she's at mentally. Not needed, but I could see why they added it. Episode 3 is Shogo's monologue with Cho at the beginning of the episode when they're in the car, which is interesting. Again, a lot of these monologues are just added in their extra animation, and they're also like usually done in cars where there's not a lot of action, so the animation wasn't a lot of extra production work, but still. Then the Sasayama and Kogami conversation in the car, and then when Shogo walks past the car, like in the middle of the episode, like what connects it. That scene was so disturbing because you don't see any action. You just see Shogo walk by as Sasayama, disappears and dies. Like, it makes sense that it was an added scene, but it's so effective that I'm like, I don't know if I could imagine the episode without it, right? Same for the monologue that we see at the beginning of episode 4, where it's about the academy and about the artwork and everything like that. Like, that was a great scene as well. So, then we have, let me get back here, the squad talking about the academy. Again, that part was really noticeable that it was an added scene because it's just, you don't see any actual animation. It's just dialogue and voiceover. So that part made a lot of sense. And then episode 5 at the beginning, Saiga's class. You didn't get Saiga's class in the actual series? What? Insane. Now, Shogo's monologue and like stroking the picture of Kogami, I'm like, yes. I'm really glad that was included because it just adds to the shipping, right? Now, Shogo's monologue about the showdown and everything and bygones being bygones, that one at the start of episode 6, totally understand why that would be just extra. It's just filler. It's just extra material. That's fine. And then we had Shogo's monologue in the middle of the episode where he's talking about the perfect plan and whatever. That part I could understand. Like episode 6, their extended scenes, fine. Totally understand. Perfectly fine. Normal. The ones that I'm kind of like amazed by are the first part of episode 7 where it's baby Ginoza and Masaoka in the safe house. That to me was such an important scene because it sets up like the dynamic. It answers some questions about Masaoka and where he'd been. It like sets all that up. It gets Ginoza, you get to see like his as a childhood, him with the gun and everything. Like to me that does so much with his character that I can't imagine the show without it. Crazy. And then of course you have, Shogo in his beautiful sweatshirt talking about the desire for attention. That part not so much, but the Ginoza and Masaoka scene I think is really well needed. And then Shogo's monologue with Cho, that one I could kind of understand. I'm like, that one you didn't fully need. The Kagari scenes at the start of episode 8 or in the middle of episode 8, the fact that those are all extra blows my mind because it's really the only time we get things about Kagari in the whole show, and we get to see a glimpse of his backstory. So the fact that without that we don't get any backstory, that's so weird to me. In the words of Jessica Wilde, that was weird for me. I was like, so if I'd watched the regular, I feel like I did a service to myself watching the extended edition, because if I hadn't, then I wouldn't have seen all these scenes with Kagari that made me love his character even more, so that when he dies, I feel even worse about it, right? Now, episode 9 has the scene of the inspector and the enforcer. Now, I think we're going to see this lady again. Obviously not the blue-haired guy that looks like the blue-haired version of Kagari, but I think the lady, it's possibly a way to introduce her character, and we'll see her more of her in season 2, because she's from Division 2. I feel like we're going to see more of her. She seems rather no-nonsense. Should be interesting. And then 9B, the other scene for episode 9, was Kogami's monologue in the middle of the episode, which I could see why it would be extra, but it still feels so integral because it gives you more with his character. So, and then I think the most out of place of all of the extended scenes, I think the one that feels most out of place that you could definitely tell was extra, besides Akane's monologue where she's hugging the pillow early on, is the scene with Kunizuka and her talking about history. It's a great monologue, and it thematically builds a lot of the concepts we've been talking about, but is it needed? No. Does it feel kind of out of nowhere? Yes. So that one I wasn't surprised. I'm surprised the stuff with the chief downloading the computer and stuff, that to me felt like an extra added scene, and it wasn't. I was like, what? Excuse me? Crazy talk. And then Shogo's monologue at the beginning. The funny thing is, half of these scenes that are included that are extra, especially the Kogami and Shogo scenes, are all shipping scenes. It's like the show went back and said, it's not gay enough. We have to add more shipping between Kogami and Shogo. We have to make this more of a love triangle than it was. It's too much just the Akane and Kogami show. We need to add more Shogo and then just make it more shippy. That's literally what they did. Literally what they did. I'm not complaining, but half of the extended scenes are just more Shogo and Kogami ship fodder. But yeah, so I thought that was very fascinating. I'm very glad, Sunspots, that you let us know about that. That's awesome. I love it. Apparently, Densetsu Seikain O Fantasy TV is the one that the timings and the full compilation was taken from. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. So yeah. So when we last left off, Mika, is that her name? Mika? I think it's Mika. She's the new girl on the scene. She's been sent, and we're like back to square one. We're back to the beginning where Ginoza is the enforcer now. His crime coefficient is too high, so he's an enforcer now like Kogami became, and Akane is the head inspector instead of Ginoza. So the only difference is Akane has, I think, the secret ability to not raise her crime coefficient, and she's able to keep her psychopaths in check, whereas others cannot. So it's going to be very curious, I feel, to see if Akane is going to go down the same route as Ginoza. I don't think she will. To see if Ginoza ends up in the same... The thing about it is, the one good thing that I like about this is that Shogo is dead. He's gone. Done. Because I wouldn't want Shogo to come back and it be like this weird thing where Ginoza has like, you know, because Shogo killed Masaoka. So no, that story is over. It's donezo. So I'm glad about that. I appreciate that. So it's going to be curious to see how this, it seems like it's going to start the same way that season 1 started, but I'm going to be curious to see where it goes. Like, what is Mika's role? Mika, I don't think, is going to be able to keep her crime coefficient in check like Akane, so what do we do about that? Is she going to end up becoming an enforcer? We don't know. And who's the new big bad going to be? We don't know. So that's going to be interesting to see who all gets involved, how they get involved, and what do we do now. So I'm excited. But we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right into episode 1 of season 2. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Whoa, I had to shuck that extra layer off. So, welcome season 2. Yeah, well, why not? I'm excited. I am excited. I'm very curious. I'm not going to look too much into the OP because the OP is focusing a lot on the guy that has the Aizen / Chris from Ace of the Diamond hairdo that also looks like Tsukishima and Genjo's love child from Bleach, which makes me concerned. I don't know, because on the one hand you're like, oh, he has the Aizen haircut, he's clearly going to be a secret villain. But then on the other hand, he looks like Chris from Ace of the Diamond, who's a secret saint. So... And honestly, in Psychopaths, you know, saints and sinners, there's a lot of gray area in Psychopaths, as Akane will tell you. There's a lot of gray area, and there's a lot of ways in which the future can change. So there's a lot of focus on Togani. Togani is the slick-haired guy. There's a lot of focus on him in the OP, so I'm going to try not to read too much into it. Obviously, no spoilers, hints, or clues, but it's going to be very interesting to see. He seems like a primary figure in this, so... It's going to be fun to go back and look back and see how his character develops over time with this. But Whiteboard Coon's back because I want to kind of break down who all of these characters are. Because we had a lot of new characters established and some named, some not named. Also, Division 2 is now involved because reasons. We can't just give it... Well, and to be fair... It's not that Division 1 is short-staffed, but they kind of are, right? I mean, even though we have 2 new guys that are technically replacing Masaoka and Kugari... in numbers. We still don't have Kogami, so we're still a member short. So it feels like they're trying to get Division 2 involved, not only to somewhat keep everything in check, but also to make things more complicated, which, as the Sybil system would want, the Sybil system wants to make things complicated because that's how they be. So this is going to be very interesting, right? A lot of parallels back to season 1, which is interesting in itself. I like it. What I really liked about when they tied back to the bomber, when they pointed out the bomber wasn't actually targeting people, he was just making a statement about the Sybil system, I was like, oh, that makes all the sense, because yeah, if the bomb, like the rabbit bomb, kind of went off away from the people, like he wasn't actively trying to target civilians, he just wanted to make a statement, and he was a construction site worker, so he had access to it. And I like that Akane picked up on that they picked up that he wasn't actively trying to hurt people, he was just trying to make a activist statement. Granted, it still destroyed stuff and caused a lot of damage, and he should have been taken into custody, obviously, but he wasn't out literally wanting to kill people. That wasn't he didn't have that malicious intent. So, and I like Akane picked up on that. I was like, oh, and then it made sense when you went back and saw the episode. So let's talk about this drug. First of all, this drug that they're touting on the screen, Lacuse. Lacuse sounds like lacrosse, but we have this Lacuse, right? And season 1, you know, Shogo and the one guy were talking about how they're developing more and more drugs to try to get people in this kind of like docile state, and they end up becoming vegetables. That's the sickness. The one girl that was the artist, her dad succumbed to it. It was that they eventually they cease to be human because they're so like stoned out of their minds, right? So this psychotropic medicine, Lacuse, and of course it's a rabbit that's like, you know, which rabbit, I think Alice in Wonderland, you think the white rabbit, and it's got this little rainbow design, so it looks all cutesy and everything. You have nothing to fear. It's available in 6 different types, right? Each treating a different kind of hue change you might experience. So it has 6 different hue changing settings to treat it, and they're just giving it out, you know, like candy in the streets. Like, here, have this, it'll help you. What's interesting about this is it's gonna be a way for them to manipulate their hues, right? So this is kind of like in season 1, we had the big thing where it was the helmet, where the helmet copied the hue of someone near you that had a low hue, and that's how it like kept your hue from getting too high or clouded. This is basically a drug equivalent of that, and that could easily get out of hand. Oh no! I'm like, did the FDA approve this? But it's in Japan, and in the future they probably don't have an FDA. So it's interesting. And what does it say? It says it's unique ingredient admin. So it has this ingredient called admin, which sounds like an administrator. It sounds like, I'm like, did Sybil system come up with this shit? Is this something Sybil system's trying to throw in the water to get everybody to be like on Akane's level? Is that what this is? What? It's a drug called admin that blocks bad mental substances. It's like an opioid. Basically, it's going to block certain inhibitors to keep you from feeling a certain way. Uh-oh. Yeah, and then they're just talking about it, and it'll help keep your psychopaths clear. Now, the creators of it are this, like, W, right? So, okay, there's a W on the rabbit, and what was that? Is that a C by it? I'm like, I'm going to Sherlock the shit out of this case, right? So there is this rabbit robot has like a W. I want to see it turn around. Is it a halo around? It's like an angel halo. It looks like a W and has like a halo around it, like it's an angel. I think it's tied to whatever is going on. There's something, it's an overarching, I like a good mystery, and so we're doing an overarching theme here. Yes. Like it a lot. And then the rabbit goes away, but the rabbit had the bombs tied to it. So the construction worker guy clearly, and that was the hologram for the actual bomb. Okay. And then we have, I like the forensics detection on this, where they're able to like match his voice and everything in the one video to the guy himself, even though he has a mask on. I love it. I love that they're able to target it. And he says we're like cogs in a machine. The crazy thing about all of this is that Akane knows that they're all cogs in a machine. That's kind of the most impressive thing about her character. She knows, but she's like trying to prove the system wrong, right? And doing it the fair way. So let's put Akane up here. We have our girl Akane. She is our certified badass of the season already. Love her. Spouting truth bombs. We'll talk about her towards the end of the episode. Love that. Love her giving the benefit of the doubt, of course. Right? Love it. And then we have Mika. Now, we have Kuranamori, which is Shion running the match. I love that Shion's actively involved in all this. Glad to see it. And we see this guy here as they try to nail down who he is. I love it. I love the science and the tech behind it all as they pin it all together. And the thing about it is, since this takes place in the future, it's like the tech can do this. And it's like, yeah, sure. Like a 98% match on the identity. Akiri Kitazawa. All right. I like that our girl Mika has freckles. She's got some freckles there. Nice. I also like that her attitude is kind of like Kogami's. She's not so innocent and demure as I imagined her at the end of season 1, which is fun. We're going to get to her in a little bit. I think it's Mika is her name. I think Mika is her name as one of the inspectors. And she kind of shares old Ginoza, not older Ginoza, but old Ginoza and Kogami's views on latent criminals. I guess the important thing would be she shares the views of Inspector Ginoza. We'll have to call it Inspector Ginoza because Ginoza is older here. So she shares the views on Inspector Ginoza and Kogami's views on latent criminals that no, if the civil system tells you that you're supposed to kill them, you're supposed to kill them. And that's kind of what Kogami and Ginoza thought back in season 1. I like this about her character. I feel like Akane is going to find, you know, there are some, like Ginoza is a believer. Ginoza believes in the Church of Akane. He goes there religiously. We'll talk about that in a second. I feel like Ginoza's totally on board with Akane, knows where she's coming from. They have history. Kunizuka's on the board as well. The Division 2 lady, no. I think she's going to give Akane a lot of trouble because she seems very no-nonsense, and she's like, no, this is how, by the book, how we're doing it. She seemed suspicious in season 1. I'm going to try not to hold it against her in season 2. She just seemed a little suspicious in season 1. Just going to say that. But I like that Mika is not this demure, innocent little lamb that's like, oh, what? She's not like Akane was kind of a sponge in season 1 where she had these ideas, but she very much was so eager to soak up everything given to her as far as what they were dishing out in terms of, you know, lectures and here's what you should think about latent criminals and all that. Like, Akane was very eager to learn and was a good sponge of information. Mika does not seem to be that, and I'm proud that Mika is not that. I'm glad Mika's not going to be Akane 2.0. She may end up getting converted like Ginoza and Kunizuka, but she doesn't seem like she's going to be this little demure lamb that learns along the way. She has pretty defined opinions of what she believes, and I like that about Mika. I think Mika can get kind of frustrating sometimes because she very much has she's like the youngest cop on the beat now, and she's just like, well, why aren't we doing it this way? And that can come across as annoying, but I kind of like that she is assertive. I like that she's assertive. It's frustrating for us, the audience, because we know what Ginoza and Akane have gone through. And none of these other characters do. So it's like you don't even know. But yeah, they have the detailed map of everything and letting the drones handle it at first. So Shimosutsuki. Shimosutsuki is her name, but I think Mika is what she is typically called, right? Yes. And then we have our crew inside the new enforcers. We have 2 new ones on the beat, right? And the redhead does not say much. So let's see here. Things couldn't be worse. And then Kunizuka's like, here's what we need to do. I like the whole time, Togani, who is the black-haired new enforcer, Togani, he's kind of watching them the whole time. He's like looking at Ginoza and Kunizuka like, okay, what are we doing? I would say in this episode, Kunizuka is the least least present. Like, she's there, but she doesn't do a whole lot in this episode. It's kind of for us to meet the new ones. So we have Togani, who is the dark-haired one. I want to get the name of the other one. And then we obviously have Ginoza. I would say Kunizuka. I'm going to put her up here. Kunizuka, she is basically the same awesome person that she is. Love her. Love our Kunizuka girl. But yeah, she's not really that much noticeable in her dialogue and everything this episode. So yeah, what I was going to say is that you see Togani kind of watching them and seeing what they're doing. And then the redhead's just fiddling with all his settings. He's just kind of messing with it, not paying attention, right? Interestingly enough, he's just looking at the file. And so they're like, we're going to work with Division 2. And then Division 2 shows up. I like, she says, Mr. Ginoza, assist Inspector Shimutsuki. I love it. I love that he has like the hand. He's getting everything ready. He kind of looks like Masaoka. The moment he called her Missy, I was like, yes, my heart. I was like, yes. I was like, be more like your dad. Yes. I love that kind of like, it's his way of honoring Masaoka, being like, I'm going to, do something my dad did and kind of be like the mentor figure. I'm like, that better not be a death flag for Ginoza. I was like, no, he's too good. I love Ginoza too much for him to die. No, not this season. Better not be. And I like that. Here's the thing. Mika does not know the history between Akane and Ginoza. She has no clue. And so it kind of goes back to season 1 where Akane didn't know the history between Kogami and Ginoza and Masaoka. But the difference is, Akane kind of just stuck her nose in their business. It was like, why are you guys like this? What's up? What's going on? She kind of came at it from a very kind of innocence, and that led them to telling her the backstory. Mika doesn't really come at it from innocence. She's just kind of like, well, why is this like this? I don't understand. She has the much more realistic approach to it. And she's just kind of like, I don't know what is up with y'all, but I'm waiting for Mika to get the backstory, but we don't need, as the audience, to see the backstory. We just came off of season 1. We know it, right? And then it recognizes all of them, and there we go. So, okay, Togani and Hinakawa. That is the redhead, Hinakawa. Okay. Hinakawa is the redhead. And interestingly enough, he's kind of cheesy and has a sense of justice. I'm going to say cheesy because he does say this really god-awful cheesy line in this episode. I don't know if it's like a translation where it sounds cheesier because of the translation. It is pretty cheesy, but we'll get to it. But he's interesting. He's kind of introverted, it seems. And then Togani is interesting. So like, welcome for joining us. And she's like, let's act with caution. Mm-hmm. And he's like, understood. Yeah, Togani seems very eager to please. Like, very understanding and eager to please. I don't want to... It's very weird because even, like, Kagari was kind of, like, joking with her and, like, trying to push her buttons and being like, yeah, we're dangerous. We're latent criminals that are enforcers, And meanwhile, Hinakawa seems rather introverted. Like, he's not going to immediately say something. And Togani is very obedient. Togani is like a Doberman. He's a very obedient dog. And I feel suspicious of that. I don't know. I could see Hinakawa being like a little innocent dog that he's just like, but why is he there? So that begs the question of, why did these guys get on the case? We don't know. Anyway, so they get the Dominators approved, and then we have our OP, which we'll get past the OP. And so then I like that Akane doesn't want to go in the building. Like, girl has been in enough train tunnels, girl has been in enough traps that she knows that, nope, this seems like a trap. Let's not go in there. Let's instead wait for him to come to us. Instead of us trying to crowd him, let's wait till he comes out. He eventually will have to leave at some point. Let's wait till that happens. And then we have, I like that, Mika is not really sure. And she, Ginoza tries to say something. He's like, he says doing it as part of his job is not the same thing. And she says, no one asked you, enforcer. And I like that Ginoza's like... Ginoza gets very much a taste of his own medicine, because back in season 1, episode 1, Ginoza was very much like, nobody asked your opinion, enforcers. You're not an inspector, blah, blah, blah. And now we see him being like, well, son of a bitch. And it's like, well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are mad at Mika for being that way to him, but I'm like, he was the same way to all of them back in season 1. So he's kind of getting a little bit of his own medicine. And even then he's just kind of like, you just see him do like the big sigh, and I like Kunizuka's like, you know. And she's like, normally no one psychopath would worsen once he plans the terrorist attack, and there's no way that they could plan a series of bombs while keeping their hue clear. But the fact is that his psychopaths worsened suddenly after the explosion. Now we see the woman there in the building, the woman that supposedly was the hologram. So they're in the building with Akira. Interesting, right? They're in the building with them. Curious. And it's like, why? So they weren't a hostage from the start. And then Akane says he has some means of keeping his hue clear, which I think is going to be the medicine, like the opioid or whatever. He's like developed a concentration of it to keep his hue clear, and now they're going to start, they've been administering it to the population under the guise that, oh, it's keeping your hue clear, thus you'll be able to commit crimes. Ha. So I'm very curious to know if the Public Safety Bureau, if the civil system is okay with this, if it's part of their experiment, if they're going to try to use the hue clearing drug to like help them further gather evidence for their civil system, because they're a giant hive mind and that just seems like something they would do. I'm going to be curious to see if we end up with like, a civil system is funny because it's villainous, but it's not like the main, it is the main villain, but it's not the main villain, right? It's very much like, it's antagonistic, but there's more to it than that. So, and there's also a more definitive villain that's always right in front of you, whereas the civil system is always in the background. It's always watching. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, and they're like, is that important? Do we need to know that in order to resolve the case? And Akane's like, we need to think past the case. I like that Akane, what I like about this is Akane is thinking of the future. Akane is not thinking of just the now. She's not thinking of the past. She's thinking of what can I do that is going to influence things further on down the line, because that's kind of her end goal, right? She said last season, she's like, I may not be able to stop civil system today, but I'm going to make it to where someday in the future, someone's going to be able to stop you. So then we have the inspector from Division 2, who is very gung-ho, kind of like Mika, and wants to go all in, and doesn't believe in holding back. She's very much like, the system works. Let's just do what we can with the system. And there are 3 enforcers that start out with Division 2. One that looks kind of like Togani, who has like the ant jacket on. Like, it's like Alien Ant Farm, so when he gets blown up, it's like, Annie, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Annie? It's like, haha. But we don't know. But no, he's not okay, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But yeah, so there's 3 enforcers with Division 2, and then our lady who has, her haircut is rivaling Ginoza's. They're trying to see whose bangs are more poignant. And then Mika just being like, should we go in too? And Akane's like, no, we're going to wait till they come out. And Akane knows what she's talking about. Girl has been through a lot. And so then they trapped them with the bomb and went from there. I did like the thing of like the bomb was detonated by the one like level getting as low as it could. That was interesting. That part was neat. And then the guy notices, and before they can do anything, they get blown up. And the guy looks back at the woman, right? Interesting. Interesting. Now, Togani, to make note, Togani seems to instantly, he's been very observant and notes Akane being correct. I find Togani fascinating already. He seems like he's very interesting, right? Because what I liked about Kogami and Akane's relationship was that Kogami constantly challenged Akane, and she kind of and-yesed him back and just answered him with another challenge right back to him, and it was a back and forth. Togani right now, and I'm probably going to eat my words later on, Togani seems too much like a loyal dog. Togani is immediately like, oh, wow, you look how smart you are. Oh, what, Akane? He seems to be like head over heels in the system. And I'm very curious to know where that's going to lead with his character. Because it's almost like he's trying to woo Akane over, and she's like, bitch, you ain't my type. She's like, okay. She's thinking of something else. So the Division 2 enforcers, this part here. Here's the thing. The one enforcer, like, pushed them out of the way and saved them from the explosion, right? He saved them from the explosion, pushed them out of the way, was still alive, still breathing, was just hurt. And what do? She calls Yamatoya, and there's like sparks and stuff, like it's gonna electrocute the water there. They leave him. They leave him for dead. They just up and left him. They were like, screw you, guy, whatever. That, to me, instantly shows with Division 2 that there is not the same sense of cooperation as Division 1. So Division 2, it almost seems like every dog for themselves. You know, because I could never imagine Kagari, you know, seeing Kunizuka on the ground and being like, and then just walking away. No, Sasayama would not have just left Kogami or Masaoka just lying on the ground. I don't think so. Even though Sasayama was kind of a jerk, I don't think that would have been the case. So it's very interesting to see this other division who doesn't value, like, they're just enforcers. They're just doing a job. There's no camaraderie. There's no, like, do they even live in the same building? We don't know. We know Division 1, they all kind of are, they have their own office together and all this. Division 2, that might not be the case. But they just left that guy for dead. That was crazy. And then they get karma for it later on. So, you know, what we do. Now, when the van came out next to go after and run over Akane, I was like, she's had her fair share of trucks come at her before. We're fine. I was like, she'll be great, right? And then, of course, Ginoza notes that it's on auto drive, and he jumps out of the way. And then I like that Kunizuka saves Mika. I'm like, Kunizuka's out here, like, kabadoning, like wooing every female on set. Like, Kunizuka is just like, she looks at Mika like, are you part of the lesbian agenda? Would you like to be part of the lesbian agenda? Sure, right? And Shion's over there like, we're not having a threesome today. No. I would be totally on board for an OT3 with Mika, Kunizuka, and Shion. Let's do it, right? She's what? She's in her early 20s. She's old enough. She's fine. I'm all here for this. Let's have this happen. And then, yeah, which is interesting because Kunizuka is an enforcer and she just saved Akane's life. So that's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening. Of course, Ginoza's like, it was a feint. And then Kunizuka's like, are you okay, Inspector? And then she says, thank you. I freaking love that Mika, like, she gets onto Ginoza and is like, shut up, Enforcer, get away. And then to Kunizuka, she's like, you're an angel, thank you. Oh, it's a fine day for the lady agenda, let me tell you. So yeah, then they notice that the equipment there has bombs strapped to it. What's interesting is the redhead that comes down there, the redhead seems the least experienced out of all of them. And he kind of like goes towards there, and then it seems like Hinakawa is the least experienced out of all of them. He was very timid when he walked towards the robot, like he didn't know what to do with the gun. He probably ain't going to last long in this world. He probably ain't going to last long in this story. No. But he seems the least suited to be here out of all of them. And he says the really, really cheesy line, because the car starts to come out, right, that has Akira, and he says, I'm going to administer justice. And I was like, that's so cheesy. What are you doing, kid? What are you doing? But here's the thing, right? So the thing about it is, Kagari was pretty young when he was with the enforcers. But Kagari had this, like, personality that was kind of like street smarts. And he was like Dodger from Oliver and Company. Like, he grew up on the streets. He knew what to do, despite the fact that he like lived in a execution chamber his whole life. But Kagari just had that personality that was like street smart. Just got it, picked it up. Hinakawa doesn't seem that way. Hinakawa seems very lambish. He seems like the lamb of the group. I don't know if he's going to be a sacrificial lamb yet or not, but he's very much the lamb, and he's the least sure out of all of them. And Akane's like, no, he's got a hostage. And then, of course, we see the woman with the bomb, but it's not a woman with a bomb. Interestingly enough. And so, yeah, I just love when they run over the drones. To me, that's the most unintentionally funny thing ever. I freaking love it. And then that's when Togani points out that there's bombs and everything on their back, right? And what's interesting in all of this is that Akane is like, oh, okay, she sees the bombs. And then she says, all right, Mr. Togani, Mr. Hinakawa, go after the culprit, and I'll take care of this. And Mika's, with Ginoza, and she's like, well, I don't understand. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't she use the enforcers as a shield? So she very much has the mindset of, we should be using the enforcers. Like, Mika has the mindset of the system, right? And what the system has told her to do with the latent criminals. And then Ginoza, though, who, told himself to think the same so that he could get through, he kind of, is with her. I'm glad he's with her, of all people. And then, yeah, oh man, Akane gets to have this badass moment. We'll get to Ginoza in just a second. She gets to have the badass moment where she, decomposes that and, fires the gun, looks badass. I'm not complaining about it. It's very much 90s schlock, but I'm here for it. Anytime make Akane look badass, will do, right? And then she puts it back, right? And they're like, are you okay, Tsunemori? And then she's like, we're going after the culprit. And then I like that Mika says, well, I was worried about you, I feel like poor Mika, she doesn't understand what's going on. She doesn't know everybody's backstory. She's worried about Akane, but Akane is also keeping a fair amount of distance between her and Mika. I can't imagine why, because she's lost so many people close to her from the last season by, letting them worm their way into their hearts. And she knows the Sybil system is watching. So she's like, I can't get too close to Mika. If the Sybil system rules her out as a threat, that could be a problem. And the chief is still there, right? So, but Mika in turn doesn't quite understand what's going on. So it's very frustrating. Now, the only confusing part about this whole episode, the only part that was confusing was the cars get close to the enforcer's hands are tied without an accompanying inspector. It's like they get super close to the semi that the one guy is driving, and then they kind of back off from there, and he manages to get away along with the hologram. So it's interesting. There was a weird moment where they go from being in the car chasing them to suddenly back in the enforcer caravan. So that was the only weird kind of technical, did we stop and everybody got back into the black armored car and then we chased after him again? Is that what we did? That part was the only weird continuity thing that I was like, but wait. And I feel like it was a continuity thing because Akane told Togani and Hinakawa to go after them and then they couldn't do it. So they were like, well, wait, now we need to backtrack and I'll get back in the vehicle. It was a weird moment. I'm not sure what to think about that, but it's not anything crazy. It was just a weird continuity moment. And so then they determine that the escapes routes are in the park. And I like that, you're going to work with the enforcers, Mika, to evacuate the residents. And she's like, are you worried about my psychopath and Cloud? And she's like, is the reason you're not letting me interact and go after the bad guy because you don't want my psychopaths getting clouded? Is that it? And Akane is just, she looks over at her and that's when Mika says, don't underestimate me. I've been an inspector for 1.5 years now. I'm capable of keeping my psychopaths clear. And Ginoza's like, well, she sure is confident. I like that. I like Ginoza saying that because he's like, okay. All right, girl, you think you got it? All right. Ginoza is becoming more and more like Masaoka, and I'm here for it. I'm just sold. I'm like, yes, become more like your dad. I like that Ginoza's still himself, but he's adopted some mannerisms like Masaoka, and I'm all about it. I'm like, yes, good. But yes, I'm like that he says, are you sure? Okay. All right. So yeah, And then they're like, well, Shisui is the girl from Division 2 that ends up making out with the guy at the end. So we don't know the name of the Division 2 lady, but I like that he calls her Missy. We're going to get back to that. And he's more like Masaoka. So Shisui is the Division 2 enforcer. And we're going to touch base on them. And Toyotama is the one that dies. Along with the other guy, supposedly. But no body, no death. He could be fine. We don't know. The situation's changed and they've let go of the person into... They've let go of that person into the park. They released them when they were holding hostage. But the timing doesn't seem right. And it's unnatural too. Why do that? It's to probably lure them. I like Shion's like, I knew you'd be contacting me. I knew you'd be asking me to help you with things. It's fine. And that's when she's like, well, this is weird. She's like the woman... There's nothing on her. It's like the hostage who's walking away from the culprit is, what does she say there? No person exists. So it's a hologram, but it's a very good hologram. And it's like, well, how is that? And it's obviously a trap. So they're like, despite the fact that Kunizuka was an excellent student, so they cut to the fact of why he could not move higher in his profession, and that was because his psychopaths kept getting clouded constantly, and they determined he didn't have the aptitude to move up the corporate ladder, and that triggered him being against the system so much. Considering his past, his video, and the actions at the warehouse, he's trying to retaliate against the system. And the most effective way to eliminate his pursuers is to draw us in with the hostage. Which is interesting, in that the hostage is the bomb. That seemed to be the case. So I like that Akane says, yeah, he's trying to like use this hostage as a bomb and trying to kill us. So Division 2, you go after it. I love it. She's like, Division 2, you Shisui, you guys are enforcers. You go find the bomb and the culprit. Not any of my crew. I don't want my crew to get killed, but you guys are kind of expendable, so it's fine. Oh no. Also, just gonna point out, Division 2 lady, she ended up having to kill one of her enforcers back in season 1. All of them supposedly, except maybe Shisui, has kicked the bucket this episode. Girl has no enforcers on her roster. Is she going to have to move over to Division 1 because she has no more enforcers in her group? What is going to happen? And then we see him like drop off the hostage and he's freaking out, running through things. But he ends up running over the drones and ends up getting in the wreck. Now, I love Akane because she's like, his crime coefficient is 202 and she could kill him, but she doesn't want to because he has the bomb. And Akane is so calm and collected and she's like, no. But then she notices that the drone was sparking the wire from the car and was going to blow up and try to protect the wife and kids. Meanwhile, she jumps in the way to get the wife and kids out of the way so that they don't get hit directly by the bomb. And then Hinakawa and Togani go back and she makes sure that Togani does not... Because Togani looks like he's going to kill the guy. Togani has like the shot. He looks like he's ready to take it. It's going to be a thing. And then Akane's like, no. I don't want you to do that. It's not too late for him. It went down for a second, right? She's like, 299. That's what I want to get it to. Freaking love it. Love it. And I love Ginoza's like, Tsunemori sure is something. I'm like, yes. I'll be honest. Do I see the possible ship between Ginoza and the Division 2 woman? Yes, I definitely do. Do I possibly ship Ginoza with Akane? That's a hard one because it's weird. It's like shipping your lover's brother with the girl after he's dead, you know? It's weird. It's weird. It's like if somebody dies and then the best friend dates that person that was their spouse. It's like, that's so weird. No. So there's a part of me that's like, no, I don't want to ship Ginoza and Akane. But then there's a part of me that's like, Ginoza and Akane have so much history that if they do end up becoming a ship, I won't be surprised. But I also kind of want Ginoza and the Division 2 lady to be in a ship because they have history and they both seem to like go to the same hairdresser. So I don't know. The shipping is going to be in this season. And then I'm sure somebody is like trying to ship Togani and Akane. And I'm like, no, Togani is too. Akane likes herself a little bit of a bad boy. Akane likes herself somebody that doesn't agree with everything she says. She likes someone that challenges her. And Ginoza could end up challenging her, but Togani is too much of a loyal dog at this point. I don't know. But I love her idea that she wants to make sure. And then she says, that's wrong. I like Mika's like, this is wrong. But, girl, you're going to be put to the test. I like this guy just throws everything but the kitchen sink at Akane, and she just keeps going towards him. She keeps stalking him to get to him. Right? I love it. Love it. I wonder if any of the people wandering by are the people that end up seeing Shisui and the others under the bridge. I also like that Hinakawa is like doing this like he's leading the people out of their building, flagging them down. It's hilarious, right? It's hilarious. So yeah. So interestingly enough, Akane's whole thing is that she wants to prove that the system, yes, Sybil's system does judge, but its opinions can be changed, right? And I love that. And I love that Mika kind of questions her and she's like, look, yeah, Sybil's system told us to kill this guy when his coefficient was over 300. But when it went under 300, then they were like, no, you're fine. She's like, as long as we can help the people, we can change the system. And that's kind of Akane's point here. Is that she's like, the people should be in control of the Sybil system. She's like, we can manipulate the Sybil system. If we want to, we can try to get to where their crime coefficient is under 300 and we can manipulate the system and get to where we can just paralyze them and deal justice after that. So I like this idea of the justice being in the hands of the people rather than the people being in the hands of justice. That's kind of her whole MO. And I'm all about it, right? All about it. So yeah. And she's like, why do I have to do this? I like that, yeah, she's like, why? Why do I have to follow this? And she's like, Ginoza, what are you doing? And then that's when, yeah, then this person's here. Our goal is to eliminate the culprit. And he's like, well, this is part of the safety bureau. He's like, Tsunemori is willing to take a chance. And the thing about it is, because Tsunemori, she knew Kogami didn't deserve death. So she tried everything she could to keep him safe. She knew Kagari didn't deserve death. And even Shogo, it seemed like she was trying to reach him maybe towards the end, and it just didn't pan out. But she didn't give up on that, right? And then I like the Division 2 person says, could you overlook her foolishness? Well, Ginoza said, could you overlook her foolishness for the time being? And then she says, you've changed. It's rather natural to become this way when you work with her for a long time. He's like, she kind of has that effect. But the way they both kind of look at each other, the way the Division 2 person and him kind of look at each other and like, you're changed. You've changed. And he's like, yeah, so I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's a shippable moment or if she's, going to be a wing woman for Akane and Ginoza. I don't know. I'm here either way. At this point, if Ginoza and Akane end up being a ship, I'm here for it. If Ginoza and this Division 2 woman become a ship, I'm here for it. I'm up for any and all shipping that this season is going to give us. And so, yeah, they're like, an enforcer from Division 2 is headed to an adjacent building. And that was the sniper that Ginoza kept from shooting him, right? And then Mika's just like, what is going on? Yeah, exactly. And then I like that Mika's like, is this how an inspector should act? And he's like, if you look away and just turn your back on those who don't understand, you'll regret it someday. And Ginoza's basically telling Mika what he himself was trying to do. He was like, look, I tried to be like you last season. I tried to turn my back on my dad and on my comrades and be the inspector, but You'll come to regret it if you do that. It's like, you guys have to collaborate. You can't just be the owner of dogs. And I like that. I like that Ginoza, he has learned from his mistakes, right? He's learned from his mistakes, and he's trying to, even though he's an enforcer, he's trying to do right? He's trying to learn. And he's like, accept what's happening before your eyes as a fact. That's a shortcut to becoming an adult, Missy. Ah, I love it! And Rika, of course, is like, Missy! Love it. Love it. Freaking love it. I know a lot of people would probably find Mika annoying in this episode, but I actually don't, because Mika is very realistic. She's acting realistic for somebody that has no clue the context of season 1, which I appreciate, right? It is realistically how someone would react. Not how we react, because we know the context, but how someone else would. And I kind of appreciate it. But then, yeah, I love how calm Akane is. She's just like, no. And everything he tells her, it's like, no, we know that. We know that. We all know that from season 1. And I love that she says, he's like, our potential and future is decided for us. And she's like, no, you are needed. And so are the bombs you made, just not in this context. I love that how she describes him. She says, you are a valued person. And Mika's like, what are you saying? And she's just trying to talk him down. She's trying to get that crime coefficient to go down. And she's like, society doesn't always do what's right. That's why we have to live virtuous lives. And it's kind of like her whole MO is stated in this moment. She's like, look, we have to be the better people. We have to step up. Society isn't always going to do the right thing, so we have to be the beacon of light instead. And he's just like, what? And she says, your desire to right a wrong, along with your skills, are needed in society. She's like, we need people like you that have a sense of justice, but you just don't realize the power you have, and you think that going to the extremes is the only way to change society, and that's not the case. Like, she's on a mission. Akane has a mission she wants to carry out. Society is comprised of individuals. By living a virtuous life, you guide society towards a path of virtue. I mean, it is idealistic to the core. But the thing about it is that, you know, normally a character with that kind of idealism doesn't understand the truth behind the system, and you're like, when they learn the truth, it's gonna completely rock their world. It's gonna be like the basement, and the basement will completely jade them and torture them. No, she's experienced the basement, and the only way for her to move on from the basement in a mildly healthy way is to do this, is to go down this path. It's either you go down this path of virtue to try to change the system, or you give up and fall into this pit of despair. And Akane has chosen this route. And it's not easy. It's not gonna be easy, but in this case, it works. It's kind of like everything she was trying to stand for in season 1 at this first episode is now refined and honed and has more meaning. She says, your sense of justice is noble. You're not, and that's when the one guy says, you're not just a cog in the machine. Even if society pressures you, as long as you have the spirit to resist, you're a human being. Interesting that Togani says this. So, Togani talks about how you're not a cog, like what the Akira guy said at the beginning, and that as long as you have the spirit to resist, you're human. Interesting. I want to know more about Togani. He looks like, you know, from this angle, this series gives me a Death Note vibes. He kind of looks like Makishima a little bit. Or, you know who I'm talking about. Makishima. Not Makishima. That's our villain. Oh, y'all know who I'm talking about. Name starts with an M. From Death Note. And then Akane. I like that Akane looks back being like, when did you get here? I like Akane look back being like, yeah, thanks. I had this. Again, I get this weird feeling that Togani is going to try to like get close to Akane and she's going to be like, not my type. Maybe. Possibly. And maybe he's working with the bad guy. Who knows? The OP kind of, you know, flushes some things to the surface, maybe. And they're like, the crime coefficient's over 140. What's taking them so long? He's an enforce at will target. And I love that Ginoza is like, nah, let my girl do her thing. And then I like that it's just like a Mexican standoff. It's like the Spider-Man meme where they're all looking at each other like, what do we do now? It's literally what it is. But Akane is like, look, the crime coefficient's 299. And then she's like, I'm going to administer justice. It's not cheesy when Akane says it. Hinakawa, you gotta earn your right to say cheesy one-liners. You ain't earned that right yet. And Togani looking at her. Togani looking at her from behind like he's analyzing her. Interesting, right? And of course, Mika doesn't believe what she's doing. She's like, their crime coefficient rarely goes down. And Akane's like, well, it's worth it to try. But Mika doesn't think so. We need to find out how he was able to keep the bombs. And I like that Akane kind of, she has her MO, she has her mission statement, but she's also like, look, we also need to know how he was making the bombs, and we need to keep him alive to question him. So that's our other ulterior motive. So there's that as well. So that's the reason I made the judgment call with the future in mind. That's all. Which I agree with. I think that was the right decision. But Mika does not. She says, you're wrong. Ooh, and that's gonna be our test this season, is to see, like, is Mika going to challenge Akane, and how is that gonna work? I like that it's a reversal from last season, where last season it was, Kogami said and Ginoza said this is the way things work, and Akane was like, no, that's not right. And here it's the opposite. So that's gonna be rather interesting. So then we have our park scene at the very end. The park scene where it says, hello, my name is... Was that right, or is that from the line from the Edie? And then we're trying to find this person, and it's like a hologram. Interestingly enough, Shisui, she says, is it a holo? Okay, I want to go back and see this. Like, the fact that something is false does not negate its existence. Okay. So the fact that something isn't true doesn't mean it's not real. Interesting. The cake is a lie. Okay. So what do we do about this? You guys failed to recognize that. Being like, no, there's someone here, but it's not who you think it is. And then he grabs Shisui. Does, like, is it supposed to be like is it supposed to be an injection? I think it's an injection. And, like, sedates her. Yeah, so it was a pin, right? So it's a pin that was injected. Okay. So it looked like a pin, almost like an EpiPen. That I'm assuming might have been an injection. That was like a sedative, maybe? Or is it that hue altering thing? And then he's like, that's why. And then the hologram disappears, and it's this guy holding her with the gun. Oh, I'm here. Huh, so who's this dude? Now, he kind of looks like a little bit like the enforcer that the Division 2 woman killed, but that guy had blue hair, so maybe a little bit different. And then, okay, so Inspector, it's on Inspector Shisui, right? Yes, Mizu, and their crime coefficient is 48, not a target. But can they not lock onto the other person? An inspector registered at CID. Why can't they get onto the other guy? And then they try to. Okay, so any rebellious conduct by enforcers will be recorded. But it doesn't work. Why does it work? Why can't they detect who it is? Oh. And then her arm is with his. What? And she says, stop it. What? And then kills him. Oh. But we don't get to see who it was. It was like the gun wouldn't lock on them. What? And then we see, oh, it was a new start. The start of my own personal battle to determine who I am. And we see WC. WC question. WC, does that mean who could? Does that mean who can? Does that mean who Christ? What you carrying? What you cracking? I don't know. WC question mark. What do you see? Herm. I mean, at this point, I think the big question is going to be, who is Akane? We know who Akane is. We know her mission statement, but it's going to be like, okay, well, how is that going to be challenged? Obviously, it's going to be challenged by Mika, because Mika does not believe her. She's like, you are wrong, girl, even though we all know the history. The Division 2 woman, she seems like she's kind of like more gung-ho, and she's going to be questioning it. Togani seems all bored on it, so we'll see where that goes. And then Hinakawa, we don't know enough about yet, but... And then Shisui, I'm going to be curious to see if she dies or what we end up getting out of her. So, but interesting. One thing that is noticeable is I know there's no book club. Sad days, no more book club. But honestly, I do like that. There was a lot of parallels to season 1 in this episode, but it was kind of done in a reversal way. And it was a fun, nostalgic callback to see Ginoza kind of being like Masaoka and to see all this. Like, it was fun. I liked it. But I'm going to be curious to see how they handle things, if they handle them differently from season 1, since our villain seems to be a little bit different from Shogo. Maybe. We'll see. But I almost talked an hour about this opening episode, so that was fun. I thought that these discussions would be a lot shorter. We'll see. I'm not going to guarantee that all of the discussions are going to be this long for this season. It was the opening episode, so of course it's going to be long. But I'm not predicting that every discussion is going to be over an hour like it was with the extended edition. But there was quite a bit to talk about this episode, so I'm really excited. I can't wait to see what else is going to happen with Psycho Pass for season 2. So I'm on board. I'm curious about this WC. Curious to see where it goes. So please, no spoilers, hints, or clues. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Psycho Pass. Bye.